Thank you for coming by to this panel discussion this afternoon. I'm Andreas Colliger. I'm the person who knows how to use badges and not much else. These guys are people who know how to do graph visualization really, really well in all kinds of interesting ways. So we're going to have a little discussion today about visualization, what it's good for, and how you can get started using it. I'm going to start, of course, with the obvious things of letting these guys introduce themselves, and then we'll get into some questions. And along the way, of course, I mentioned this earlier, I'll say it again, please do interrupt us. I mean, don't shout out, but raise your hand if you've got something you want to drill into, you've got a question about. Please do that. I'll be happy to come around and repeat your question and then have these guys answer to you rather than to me. Okay. Please, Corey.
Sure. So my name is Corey Lanham. I handle the U.S. Or North American business for Cambridge Intelligence. That's the company that makes keylines. We're out there in the lobby in the speech that Joe just made about an hour ago.
I'm Houston Hedinger. I'm the founder and CEO of Graph Alchemist, and we're a keylines competitor. I'm just kidding. I have the rest of my introduction. We're actually a data science and data visualization firm based in Portland, Oregon, and we do a lot of things, traditional data science, a lot of graph-based analytics now, and what we're looking to move in towards completely is actually graph-based visualization. And one of the things I'll talk about today is the fact that graph visualization is actually driven by a lot of the trends in the data itself. And so, with all the things happening that Emil talked about this morning, it's getting a lot easier to actually build these sorts of tools.
Sebastian Eman. I'm the CEO of a small startup called Linkeruse. We help companies visualize graph for everybody. And before that, I've done my PhD in computer science in the analysis of evolving networks. And I've also co-founded an open source software called Gephi to help anybody visualize and analyze networks.
I'm Kevin Madden. I'm the director of technology at Sawyer Software, a provider of graph layout and visualization algorithms and advanced web application publishing frameworks.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So to get things going, the thing that I'm most curious to learn about actually from you all is why any of us should bother with visualizations. Like we saw some great demonstrations. We see graphs, pictures of them everywhere. I mean, is it just pretty pictures or is there something useful to be done with it? Kevin?
Graph visualization is an extremely powerful paradigm. Inside a lot of things in nature and a lot of things of social interaction, graph visualization is actually one of the only ways to really get into the details. When you look at other traditional bar charting and pie charting kind of applications have been around forever. And obviously people are wanting, otherwise this room wouldn't be packed. The reverse engineering systems, like the world is so complex and so interactive now where systems are dependent upon each other. And visualization can empower the analyst or the person to really use the human mind powered with the computer together to make intuitive decisions. And without the visualization, you're left assuming that the computer understood. And I firmly believe it's a human-computer interaction between the visualization and the power of graph analytics tied together with modern web publishing frameworks that really empower the user to display and understand their information, of how they're interconnected. Thank you.
You need visualization when you want to better understand your data, and in particular the graphs. It seems to be a bit difficult because you don't know most of the time how to read a graph visualization, how to interpret it, how to make sense of it. But imagine that you know how to use Excel, because when you were at school, we taught you how to read tables, and it was pretty hard, but you have forgotten anything of it. So with graph visualization, we are in this way that we have to learn and interpret the visualization, and it is necessary because it is a strong support to think about how are the connections, the complexity, and to make sense of it, really to create new information.
So just to hit on, I think another aspect of visualization is that visualization is inexplicably tied to actually communication. and human communication. So, graph data itself is actually modeled off of, is arguably the most flexible and kind of open data format. You can model almost anything, especially Neo4j will claim, as a graph, and I think they're proving it. The underlying data itself is not necessarily intuitive if you look at just the data, especially for a non-technical user. So graph visualization, to me, I think is important because for the 99% of the world that isn't writing Cypher queries, isn't actually structuring data into a graph, isn't looking at the output of a graph in a JSON or a CSV format, it's extremely important that you have an ability to communicate with those stakeholders to explain the information that you're actually working with. Whether it's looking at gene pathways in cancer research, whether it's looking at a supply chain network and dependencies within that supply chain network, whether it's doing what-if scenarios in a social network. I mean, all those sorts of things have an element of communication, which visualization is best at and is most quick at.
You don't need graph visualization all the time, despite the fact that our entire company is based on it. But to be honest, some of the people that are using graph databases building a recommendation engine. So, Amazon, when I log into my site, says, you might like reading this book because you read 50 Shades of Grey. No, but anyway, you don't need, the user doesn't need to know why that particular book got recommended to me. They don't need to see the pathway of what I'm linked to, who my friends are, and all of that. They just want to recommend me a book. So I think it is possible to oversell the value of graph visualization, but I will also stand, by everything that everybody else up here said, is that in certain circumstances, in many circumstances, it can be the only powerful way to understand the relationships in your data.
So from what you guys were saying, like there's an aspect of, analysis really, right, involved in this as well. And then Houston, you were touching on this other aspect of like also just for communicating, right? And I guess on the communicating side, that's talking to people who otherwise don't understand anything about the data. They can look at a graph visualization and actually understand something. For the analysis part, does that require like I guess it actually was the Cypher character in the Matrix, like staring at the Matrix rain thing, right? He's like, no, it doesn't look like the rain to me. I can see the woman in the red dress right there. Is there that level of like just having to know graph visualization before you can actually get usefulness out of it?
So from our perspective, I think the power of graph visualization comes from being able to expose that understanding and bring that down to the level of somebody who doesn't need to know Cypher, who doesn't need to know data modeling or anything like that, to just know, I'm connected with Andreas because I sat on a panel with him, and being able to look and interact with that data that way without having to have that deeper level of understanding of the technology behind it. And that's kind of what Keylines was founded on, was being able to provide that to end users.
Yeah, I think your question is best answered if you frame it around who the audience is. So it really depends on who's the audience. I think most of the folks that understand the underlying data, back to what Corey said, they probably intuitively know a lot of what they're hunting for, even in an exploratory data analysis type environment. If you're packaging the visualization for an end user that is maybe less familiar with the data, then how you kind of tell the story of that insight to them becomes a lot more important. For us, we're also the sponsors of an open source project called Alchemy.js. I somehow forgot to mention that in my introduction. We're very much looking at developers as an audience and figuring out how do you guys quickly build applications based on graph visualization. Your audience, we're kind of once removed, so we don't really look at them directly. But what I'll say is I've seen less kind of aha moments come out of the blue. And I think what visualization does really well is it makes the grunt work of exploratory data analysis a lot easier. You can, even the Neo4j browser, you can identify what your data model looks like a lot more rapidly. And that time to insight when you're doing thousands of queries is extremely important because, just to get to what you're looking for is, if you can lower that, a few seconds every query, you're going to be saving yourself tons of time and energy.
Yeah, I will complete your answer that you really need to know what you want to do with the visualization. What do you expect from it? What kind of knowledge you expect? If it's for confirming something that you already know or finding anomalies, suspicious connections in between the different entities. This is something that we really have to think before starting to make some nice visualization. The good ways in any project to find what's really at stake and to focus, because there are so many options to visualize the data in different ways or to interact in different ways, that it may be good to ask the experts to know who they know how to build efficient graph visualization, what would be the best for the use case and for the end users.
The amount of data growth that we're seeing, and I think most of us are seeing, is immense. And the importance of graph analysis tied together with graph visualization is it allows you to focus on what's important in the data and separate the wheat from the chaff.